2 years or so we've been doing our podcast, one of the subjects we come back to again and again and again, because it's just too damn funny, is this the comedy, the drama that surrounds Wisła Kraków, the football club. Now, most of the time when we talk about them, it's something connected with their ownership situation. What was it? How long has it been since the Cambodian Prince guy? When was that?
I think that was like almost a year ago now.
Was that the end of 2018?
It seems like it was a while ago.
It was Christmas time, but not this past year. Okay.
You lose to Van Lee.
That's right. The Cambodian royal family.
Wasn't there a Finn involved too?
Yeah, he was like the broker of it all or something. Or was he Swedish? Or was he
a Nigerian Prince somewhere like that?
Yeah, it was just bizarre. He was going to save the club and invest his vast fortune, but it didn't work out for reasons that I don't remember. But it was really funny talking about it at the time. Anyway, go back and find the episode where we talk about that if you want to. But Wisła's back in the news this week and back on our radar for the first time in a while, I think, because of something we learned just a few days ago regarding the situation with the horrible monstrosity that they call a stadium. We've learned that the city's going to dump even more money into the black hole of expenses related to the Wisła Stadium. But I thought we'd take this opportunity before we jump into the current news about what this new expense is all about. Let's have a quick refresher course with the recent history of the Wisła Stadium and the disaster it's been for the last decade or so, almost 15 years, something like that. I forgot, Dave, you've been inside the Wisła Stadium just a couple of times, right? Or just
once or twice. Actually, do you know what? The last time I was there, it was fully built. But the first time I went, one side was missing, which was atmospheric, and I got to see close up. Bit of Polish football racism. One dude just kept going for the entire match. Like, it was unbelievable. One of the most energetic displays of racism we've ever seen in my life.
Energetic. Well, the origins of their current stadium kind of basically begin in 1997 when a Polish businessman named Bogusław Supiał, a billionaire businessman actually, when he bought the club. Now he made his fortune. Supiał made his fortune in cable, and I don't mean cable TV. I mean actual cables. His company's called
glass fiber.
I don't, for various industrial purposes. Are you a cable expert? I'm not much on cable myself. But
I've kind of presented myself as such, but no, continue.
Company's called Telefonica, and if you go over that new tram bridge that connects Lipska and Wilicka streets in Krakow, you can when you're up high on the bridge, when you look down, you can see into the storage yard of Telefonica, and you can see miles and miles of cable. Well, anyway, his purchase of the club started a very successful run for Wisła, largely as a result of the money he put into it. They won the league title 8 times in 14 years after Supiał bought the club. And this quick success led Wisła into this classic trap, and I think Dave will tell us something about it in a minute, the classic trap of believing that they were ready to become successful on a European level in European competitions. But here's the thing. To qualify for European competitions, you have to have a European-level stadium, right, that meets European standards in terms of capacity and crowd safety and media facilities and so on. And at that time, Wisła Stadium was nowhere near that level. As recently as 1998, they still had one of those annoying running tracks around the pitch. The pitch wasn't even surrounded by seats. There were only stands on the east and west sides. There was no dedicated section for visiting fans. They didn't have regulation nighttime lighting until 2002. They had no system for heating the turf until 2003, and this is in Poland. In 2004, a seating section on the north end of the pitch was finally added, but it only held 1,000 people. So these modest improvements were made just before a major announcement that would change everything and make the club even more ambitious in their plans. In 2007, it was announced that Poland and the Ukraine would co-host the 2012 European Football Championships. And even though the host cities were not announced at that time, it was assumed that Krakow would be one of them. Now, this was the perfect timing for Wisła, and it gave them the opportunity to appeal to the national government in Warsaw for help in constructing an even more elite-level stadium that would be used for 1 month during Euro 2012 and then serve as the home of the soon-to-be mighty European club, Wisła Kraków. Their original plans, which they estimated to cost about 200 million zlotys, were no longer enough. So they went back to the drawing board to design an even bigger and better stadium. A 20,000-seat stadium was no longer enough. They needed a 32,000-seat stadium. They added a huge club store and even a museum of Wisła Kraków, which has still not been completed, by the way, to this day. They added a dedicated media pavilion, which ultimately cost more than 12 million zlotys. Architects got back to work, and Wisła started counting all the money they were going to make from selling 32,000 tickets to every match. Well, did not work out that way. In May of 2009, we learned that, in fact, Krakow would not be a host city for Euro 2012. The organizers felt that existing tourist traffic in Krakow already pushed the local transport infrastructure and the hotel capacity to their limits.
Well, Kropski decided not to even bid, though.
That's right.
Yeah. He said we have enough tourists. It wasn't that
That's what he said.
Yeah.
So instead, Warsaw, Poznan, Gdańsk, and Wrocław hosted the competition. And in the end, the Wisła Stadium was used as a training ground for the Dutch national team. So that meant no money from the national government for Wisła's new stadium. But by this point, they were fully committed to building it anyway. Thanks to sheer persistence and the stupidity of the local government that I'll get to in just a minute. Oh, and 600 million zlotys. In 2011, they officially opened the stadium that you can see today. Oh, by the way, that same year, 2011, the stadium was named as the ugliest building in Krakow by a National Association of Architects.
A lot of ugly buildings here, so
They won. And you have to look at the Forum Hotel to realise that the bar is set very, very low indeed for that.
So at that time, both the club and the city justified the expense with the same cliche you hear everywhere. The stadium will pay for itself. Well, it hasn't worked out that way. Right from the beginning, the yearly cost of maintaining the stadium has been about 5 million zlotys. That's just to keep the doors open, keep it functioning as a building that can be used for anything. Wisła, the club, they pay the city about 100,000 zlotys for renting the stadium for each match. So they play about 20 home matches a year in various competitions. So that's roughly 2 million zlotys a year. The rest was supposed to come from all the office space they were going to rent out and the other big events like summertime concerts and festivals and things like that. Now, as you know, none of that has happened. Why? Because the stadium has been unusable for those things. And when I say unusable, I mean like government authorities say say the stadium doesn't meet necessary safety standards. This is just a short time after 600 million zlotys was spent on a brand new stadium. In just the first few years after they opened the stadium, they had to spend 100,000 zlotys on the ventilation system, 70,000 on emergency lighting, 150,000 to fix the security monitoring, 350,000 on ticket machines, and on and on and on. And so the Wisła Stadium has been a disaster, a financial disaster, and artistic disaster from the beginning. 600 million zlotys. And this for a club that hasn't won a trophy of any kind since 2011.
However, they have won 7 titles in the last 20 years, and that's why it's one of the greatest own goals in history.
That.
And we have to get to how great a location it is, why it should be the easiest football club. You know, it's just bad mismanagement, man. It's painful to hear all this. Keep going.
Well, their fall.
In a good way. I mean, I'm not sagging John. I'm just the story is painful.
Wisła's fall from the elite of Polish football started exactly when the new stadium opened, right? So right now, as we speak, and in the first week of May 2020, during this Corona-enforced break, they are 13th out of 16 teams in the Polish Ekstraklasa. The possible cancellation of the season because of Corona could save them from relegation and the prospect of being in the same league that currently has teams from places like Nowy Sącz and Mielec. Only Wisła would be in that league with a 32,000-seat stadium to fill. Now, okay, there's the background. All this brings us to this week's news. A few days ago, we learned that the city has agreed to pay 9.7 million zlotys. 9.7 million zlotys for the copyright to the stadium. The copyright. I'm confused by this, but we're going to talk about this in just a second. Now, this copyright to the stadium is needed for further city-financed improvements that are needed to modernize a stadium that is 10 years old.
Well, they have never quite got it right, John. I mean, there is a need for the city to step in, I think. You know, are we ready to talk about that?
Maybe, but they shouldn't have to step in like this. That's what I'm getting to.
But for the money they can do this, actually, I think this is I think finally they're so sick of dealing with idiots from Wisła Kraków, they're taking the matter in hand and good on.
Well, the improvements they want to make in the near future are budgeted, start laughing at that, budgeted to cost about a further 20 million zlotys. This is on top of the 10 million they're going to pay for the right to make these improvements. Now, among the changes they want to make They want to connect the stadium with the Giordano Park next door. Currently, it's divided by a fence. They want to make room for a cafe on the ground floor. They want to expand the parking available for cars and buses, and renovate, again, the ventilation and the roofing. Oh, speaking of roofing, this is a great story. Speaking of roofing, in 2013, 7 years ago, a large part of the roofing had to be removed because it was badly damaged by falling ice from another part of the roof. And those missing pieces have still not been replaced. Again, 7 years later. This happened, get this, it happened because the higher section of the roof has and had a heating system that was, it melts the snow, obviously stops it from turning into ice, so it doesn't fall on other things. But the heating system was not extended all the way to the end of the roof. So I want you guys to guess, where do you think the ice accumulated on the roof?
Somewhere near the end?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Another thing we want to change. Get this. This is another thing we want to change.
But doesn't that sound like I'm sorry. You're in danger of arguing against yourself here, isn't it? Because I know you're about to say they shouldn't spend money on this, but shouldn't it have been fixed 7 years ago?
Shouldn't the original heating system have been extended to the end of the roof?
What's the option now? Leave it sitting there like a white elephant?
Yeah, I know.
It's in the middle of our city.
More, good money after bad. Another thing they want to change, there's some empty dressing rooms and pools, like swimming pools, that are unused, and right now they're in a decayed, neglected condition. Why are they neglected and decayed? Because soon after they were completed, the team moved its training facility to Myslenica, about 20 kilometers south of Krakow. And they didn't need these dressing rooms and pools, so they just sit there rotting to this day. So let's go back to this copyright. A spokesman for the city department that's responsible for the roads and traffic management, he admits openly that it was an oversight, that they didn't get it to begin with, a mistake, that they didn't secure the copyright to the stadium earlier when the city paid 600 million zlotys for it. And after this, after they finally arranged this latest deal that cost 9.7 million, the stadium will be under the full, complete, total ownership of the city. There's an architectural firm called Architis or something like that, that originally charged the city 3 million zlotys for the blueprints. 3 million, the original fee. Now, it's universally agreed that someone on the city's side, the lawyer, I guess, should have put a provision in that contract giving ownership of the blueprints to the city. But no, just for some reason they didn't, right? Government work. Now, that same company, Architis, is getting 10 million zlotys to sell something to the city, the copyright, that should have been included in the contract for 3 million. Pretty good business for this firm. Now, don't forget the larger context. Don't forget that just 2 weeks ago, the city was turning off the lights everywhere in the middle of the night in the city to save money, right? Now, granted, this is because of Corona. These are strange times and no one was outside in the middle of the night. I get that. But the same city government that wants to save 20,000 zlotys a night on lights is paying 10 million for a copyright that they should have got for free years ago so that they can have the right to spend more money, 20 million, on a stadium that they've already poured 600 million into. Now, the city is partially justifying this newest so-called investment in the stadium because the stadium is supposed to host the opening and closing ceremonies of the 2023 European Olympics, or the European Games.
We spoke about this, yes.
That's right. First of all, listener, yes, there is such a thing as the European Games. After amazing successes in Baku and Minsk, the games are coming here to Krakow. This is the competition that, remember, we talked about this. Remember, the city was surprised to learn that they won because they were the only entrant in the competition to get the games, and they're trying to back out of it now.
Even I had to Google that shit at the time, yeah.
So in the aftermath of the coronavirus,
a lot about Baku.
When the city's tax base is devastated because of local job losses and the total destruction of tourism, the city is spending at least another 30 million zlotys to upgrade Wisła's horribly ugly money pit of a stadium to host a sporting competition that no one has ever heard of.
Which I believe has just...
I need a drink. I'm going to take a break. You guys talk about...
tour de force performance, John, I have to say.
What the hell is copyright on a goddamn building? Anybody have an idea?
What's your solution? Disband the club, knock the stadium down and turn it into
firing a squad for the entire city government.
Look, you've laid out in forensic detail what a cluster... I promised I'd stop swearing to my parents on the show, so they've started listening. But, a cluster F. But here's the thing. Actually, for the money that City piss away on sponsorship of events like the Coke Live Festival, which they also sponsor for 20 million a year or something.
Crazy.
I mean, it's absolutely insane. They piss money against the wall for the Tour de Pologne, the marathons, 65 fun runs.
Don't forget, this is a city government that's constantly raising the price of bus and tram tickets because they don't have money for that.
Hundreds of millions for cultural events. And guess what? Owning a football club at this stage, taking full ownership of it. That area is an absolute gem. It's a brilliant location. The trams connect it all up. It's an absolute slam dunk if somebody with a brain and a proper football administration background can get in the hot seat. All it comes down to at the end of the day, this entire tale is poor management. I mean, across the street, Cracovia did a fantastic job of, taking their fan base into a new stadium, just showing what can be done.
Stadium that fits their needs in terms of capacity.
I always kind of thought, the City, they tried to play ball with Visa. It got rolled up into the Euro excitement when they ploughed that 600 million into the stadium. The whole thing was a disaster. But what do you do now? Now they finally have total control of it, and there's a few easy wins they can get there. They can gut it again. They can really do a job on the ground floor. Isn't there great potential there, John, for an outside park area, fan meeting zone, Park Giordano right beside it, the tram connects it in from the city. It's beautiful.
It could be integrated better, but what are you going to do? It's a 32,000 seat stadium. You know what their average attendance is over the last few years? 15,000.
You got to get the spend per customer up, okay? You got to get people hanging out there before the game.
Polish fans don't spend a lot of money.
Cheese room.
Yeah. I don't think Polish fans spend a lot of money at the stadium.
There's two big bars over the street in Cracovia, and they're always rammed before games.
But the issue here is, what are you going to do on non-match days, which is roughly 340 days a year? It's not a recreational area,
I'm
really.
Sure, that's part of their strategy, because they will now have the opportunity to offer that as an event space to artists.
They've had the opportunity to do it for 10 years.
But now they're saying, you know what, in for a penny, in for a pound, I hope. There's still great potential. Tell me this, Sean, yeah? Is it not possible that somebody could turn it around?
I don't think so.
I think you have to raise it to the ground. I
don't think so.
There's been a few councilmen that have suggested just basically tearing it down. That there's no way you could put in enough money there to make it start earning back its money. It's sunk costs.
If we didn't have the Tehran Arena, maybe. But how many have they had some kind of music festival or summertime thing? I don't think so. Cracovia Stadium has had a few. Red Hot Chili Peppers were there a few years ago. What's his name? The Italian opera singer whose name I can never remember was there a couple of years ago. The blind guy.
Linguini. No, Andrea Bocelli.
Fettuccine. Bocelli, that's right, exactly.
If you show the fans that you're doing the right things, you price it right, you start to put a structure, a good team in place, you start to show the fans that the club means something again.
Well, they do have new ownership. Just in the last 2 weeks, they have new ownership.
14 times champions, new ownership. You'd like to think Jakub Błaszczykowski is still at the club. He's got massive connections. Absolutely.
They're on the edge of relegation right now.
Top level footballer 2 years ago.
But the thing is, we have to kind of separate the actual club from the stadium, because the stadium, because of the financial setup and everything like that, from a long time was the cities, and they would originally they thought they would be renting out most of that space to Wisła. That Wisła would be paying like 2-3 million a year, but then Wisła decided not to have its training facilities there, not to have its offices, everything like that, moved that all out all over the place, and only rented out for those days when they were playing. And all of a sudden, the financial prospects of that stadium just fell flat, fell apart, and the city's been trying to figure out what to do with it since then. And the fact that Wisła.
Exactly. That's the point I'm trying to make, Tom, Mike, is that whatever way you roll this up, it's the city's problem, because the bloody thing is one of the biggest landmarks in the middle of the city.
So ugly. So ugly.
I have great sympathy for the fact that they're taking this on again. I think the easy thing to do would be to just blame other people.
But Dave, even if Wisła turns it around, even if Wisła as a club turns it around, even if they start experiencing success as a club, the benefit will be theirs. The city will still be stuck with the bill. It's not going to change the financial equation for the city, even if the club is very successful competitively.
Well, I just think a healthy Wisła Kraków is good for Kraków.
But I'm saying that's separate from the stadium issue right now, because I don't think the city should be investing in a stadium like this or putting so much money into something they've already lost so much money in. It should be Wisła's problem. The city should basically just tear down the stadium and sell the land.
No, that's not going to happen.
Okay,
let Josh jump in.
Quick question. So you mentioned the Tehran Arena, which is now fully on the European map as a concert venue, and it's it's in many ways it's a fantastic place. We've been privileged to have a kind of a behind the scenes tour.
We
can see.
So excited.
the kind of
Best 2.5 hours.
the kind of level of technology, the customer experience, and so forth. You pitch up outside, and you're like, yeah, this is kind of a brand new, spanking modern place where I'm going to enjoy seeing a concert or whatever.
I've heard.
Now, but like this is my point. Kind of, we've heard at great length from John about the money that the Krakow City has pissed away, let's say, to put it kind of.
No, that is the word.
On developing this, this carbuncle on the side of Wonya, and yet we have the Tehran Arena now. Like, how much city money went into develop? Who developed the Tehran Arena? What was the story there?
I think that's a publicly financed building as well,
right?
But I don't have the statistics at hand right now. But they have very quickly developed that as a kind of a must location. All these big European tours that go through Poland, it's either here or at a place in Warsaw. It used to be in Katowice at Spodek, used to be in maybe Wrocław at the Hala Ludowa, something like that. But this is fixed as a tour stop for big name acts. And I think, again, I don't have numbers, but the stadium, the arena rather, does pay for itself. Also, I would add to the list, Josh, ICE here on Rondowski, smaller arena, of course, but super high standard. Cracovia is there for the outdoor stadiums. I just don't see a market niche for Wisła, the Wisła Stadium, to take up any events.
I see 5 or 6 examples of how it can be gotten right, and how I just prayed at this time that they will get it right. Call me
such an optimist,
call me a romantic.
Such
okay,
an optimist.
I'm a football fan. To me, football, stadiums and clubs are cultural institutions. They do have huge value, and there's no doubt the brand
so if they're cultural institutions, why does the public pick up the tab and the privately owned club enjoys the benefits?
Look, it's been a disaster. When the billionaire sold up, I said it. Anytime we've discussed solutions for Wisła Kraków, what do I always say to you? They need a sugar daddy, a really rich one.
But it just never ends with them. There's always something. And who were the idiots that built the stadium? There's always something broken, needs fixing, replacing, whatever.
Yeah, it's been a disaster. The 600 million renovation, the expansion of the ground, is one of the greatest mess ups in the history of.
And again, I keep going back to how ugly it is. I mean, when you look at that, when you walk up to the stadium for the first time, are you struck by how amazing it is? No, you just look at it, you go, "What the fuck is that?"
Right? It's like it's a normal.
And even inside, it just seems cheap to me.
Cantilevered stadium, but it doesn't offend me around. I don't think it's ugly.
I think the thing that's exactly. I mean, it looks like it was a new stadium in the late 70s or the early 80s.
Exactly.
It doesn't have any of the kind of modern stadium concepts that was. I mean, and the Cracovia Stadium, which is 2 years newer, 3 years newer, or something like that, is okay. It's smaller, but it is completely on a piece. It's it's pleasing to the eye. It's
right there on the street. It kind of fits in with its surroundings. It's nice,
look, I'm not
nice materials, nice color.
The development, it was a disaster. I said that. Look, they expanded it way too big. It's an old-fashioned design. They never nailed the concourse level. That's the huge key area of a stadium. You need to get people.
Oh, can we get back to the main question? I think we skipped over this, Mike. What can you tell us about the idea of a copyright on a building? I still don't understand this.
John, yes, I know you find it a little confusing.
I'm very confused by this.
Something that exists in lots of legal systems all over the world, including the United States. Whenever an architect designs a building, that design he owns the copyright to it. And when you build the building, you don't automatically gain the copyright laws. Now, copyright laws are extremely complicated. They're differing from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. In some cases, you can change some things. In other cases, you can't change some things. If it's something that's visible from the street or part of the landscape, you also can't automatically change things on the building. And this is the case where we have the stadium right now, which is publicly owned, yes, but it's the architectural firm or the architect still owned the rights to it. So nobody else could say build that same building, or the city could.
Yeah, I get that, but the city just wants to make a few cosmetic changes.
And at that point, you're changing what the original design was.
And again, like I said earlier, the city paid this architectural firm 3 million zlotys for the plan, and now 10 million for the copyright. Does that make any sense to anyone? This sounds insane to me. And it also sounds like something that would never happen if a private company contracted an architectural firm to build some huge facility. It would be, resolved. This is something that only government can do, is overlook something so obvious and get stuck with a bill like this just, a few years later.
We need to also remember, going back to the actual team, the management of the team, basically, we know they were corrupt. They were doing a bunch of things and I wouldn't be surprised along the way of designing this stadium and getting involved that they were also making sure that they were getting their kickbacks, even though the city was footing the bill.
Unfortunately, just at the time when the economy and the times and the success of the club were ripe for a big investment, it looked okay on paper. It had a big owner.
Euro 2012.
Exactly. Everything looked good, but the details were all wrong. And the main issue is the management of Visa were absolutely corrupted by the Sharks, by the whole institution. They never had any intention of creating a sustainable business out of the club. They were only in it to leverage themselves into positions of power, and they only saw their own greed and their own motivations to cover up their drug.
They wonder how much of that 600 million zlotys found its way to dodgy bank accounts.
Yeah, God help us all. I mean, it's a hell of a story, isn't it? What are these new owners like?
Wojciechowski, the former owner, Yaroslav Królewski, longtime fan, businessman, and the third guy I'm not sure about. But yeah, new ownership taking...
That's my thing about Wojciechowski.
Taking over just this week.
You just have this hope that his whole idea is to bring credible people in. Otherwise, why is he here? Like, I mean, this is a big step.
Well, right now they need to survive in the extra class of the highest league. If relegation is devastating,
worth looking at.
That's true.
And I'm hoping he's bringing in credible people that would never allow the kind of nonsense that you've just laid out.
Well, the next time you pass the stadium, going there on Bonia, and you look over at that big pile of twisted metal and red and blue and white seats, it is that bad. Man. Think about all the money the city. Translation, you
can I ask you a question
have put into it? What?
Can you? Because you haven't engaged with it yet.
What?
Because the fact it's right on Park Jordana, it's absolutely a beautiful part of the city. Like, it has huge potential. The outside area of that ground.
That whole going further. What is it? West on the other side of the stadium. That whole region is slated for a lot of redevelopment in the next few years. In fact, ironically, Cracovia, the other club, is developing some land there as like a training center or something, and your usual cafe recreational area, but. It's underutilized, that area. What's it called? What's that neighborhood? Is that Branovica? It's not Branovica, is it?
It's not, but it's not the direction. Yeah, and there's that whole river that connects to Rydlana. I think that goes past.
Well, getting over to Army Krajowy and Remonta, that whole area is really coming up quite a bit. They're putting some nice bike paths in there and some recreational stuff. Usual kind of mixed, commercial residential development. It's on the upswing for sure. And you're right, Dave. It could be a lot nicer than it is for sure. Well, that's it for our discussion of Wisła Krakow's financial situation and the stadium, et cetera, et cetera. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to go to our site, krakcast.pl, 220-something episodes there, including a lot of stuff about Wisła. And what was his name? The Cambodian prince? What was his name?
Vanna Lee.
Vanna Lee. So check it out if you haven't already.
Sounds like an old jazz standard, actually.
Vanna Lee?
Yeah. You'd have to know your jazz, really.
Okay, I'll trust you on that one, Josh. Thanks.
It's not a joke.
Been enjoying that Miles Davis.
Yeah.